This is Reah, and this is Just the Who of Us, where we talk about a range of topics including life events, current events, spirituality, entertainment, family relationships, as well as answering listener questions and more.
Welcome, welcome. I'm really excited to have you here today to talk about your journey as an author. One of a few conversations that my listeners will hear from you. Um, Tell me, just go ahead and kind of introduce yourself and let us know who you are and where at in the world you are.
Oh, my name is Ingrid, and I live in Portland, Oregon, in Pacific Northwest. And right now, I'm in Southern California visiting I have two sons that live in Southern California, so that's where I am right now.
Oh,
And
no.
yeah, it's nice. My I call myself an irreverent wise woman. That's how a lot of people know me. I also am known as the Rune Woman because I do a lot of work with Nordic animism and runic symbology and mythology from circumpolar people in Europe. So I've written two books at this point about runic wisdom and Nordic animism, and this third book that's coming out in September is specifically about women. So the title of it is Women of the Always. And I'm excited. It's a little different direction for me, but it has a story, as I think all books have a story as to how they come into be. I mean, it's like to me being pregnant. You're impregnated with something, and it has to gestate for however long that period is, and then you give birth to it. And that just like a baby elephant might take 2 years to develop, or a human might take 9 months. I sense that this is true about our books as well, is that they have their own timeline, and we as the author, the birther, need to be willing to be patient with that.
I agree. It's funny that well, it's interesting that you put it that way because it makes so much sense. I know for like different types of books that I've written have taken kind of different amounts of time. Um, the more kind of personal and intense the book, the a little bit it takes a little bit longer because you're pouring so much emotion into it.
Mhm.
Um, my when I wrote my autobiography, it took me about 6 years, but that was because I took a 3 or 4 year gap because it became so emotional in the beginning. Whereas when I wrote my workbooks, I think those were in probably about 9 to 12 months. So um, I think that's a really good way to look at it, a really nice perspective. It is, you're kind of creating this baby of yours, whether it be informational or whether it be, from personal experience. You are kind of creating and growing this baby that you then put out into the world for the world to experience then next.
I've never had multiple births. All of my children are single birth, but I also have felt that sometimes we have several books waiting to be born,
Hmm.
as if you were pregnant with triplets. And
Right.
there's some point that a decision is made, or energy is aligned, which baby gets birthed first. And we
Yeah.
don't get to choose that. I really don't believe that that's part of our choice. There's something bigger and more powerful that happens. Even if you have to have a cesarean birth, there's a choice that's made as to which child is lifted up out of the womb. And
Right.
that's dependent upon their position or perhaps their size. I mean, there's so many factors involved. And I've felt that this book that's coming out in September about women's wisdom I felt like it needed to be written a long time ago, and it was in there processing, but it wasn't the first baby to come out. So that's anyway. I know I'm speaking in the language more about women, but I really believe we forget often that the power of the female is the power to create life in her own body and to bring it forth. And that as authors, not that, I mean, there's so many, there's, start again. We forget that men can be creators and writers just as women can. That's not the difference. But there's something else that happens, I believe, in the being of she who has the ability to give birth from her body, and that maybe that comes into form or evidence in the actual written book.
Yeah,
Excuse
no, I completely agree. I understand and I completely agree with that. I want to talk for a second about something that you said kind of stands out to me because the way that my books came out and the way that I planned to write them was completely different. And it was kind of like a divine intervention kind of thing. It wasn't it was in my control, but out of at the same time. Um, so I initially started writing my autobiography, and honestly, when I started writing it, it wasn't even something I was ever going to put out into the world.
me.
It was kind of just like I was writing down my life experiences and feelings just to kind of work through them. And I worked on that. I kind of did my outline. I started on some chapters, and then I put it to the side. Fast forward about 3 or 4 years later, I was actually promoting my workbooks, and a publisher reached out to me. We started talking about the workbooks, and then I mentioned my autobiography. And she said, read the first paragraph of that to me. And I read the first paragraph, and she said, I want that.
Oh,
And, and I was like, but I'm not ready. Like, I wasn't going to put that out, kind of thing. And so that was actually my first published piece was my autobiography. And I had these workbooks. I later self-published them, but that was the first work that it was the first thing I started, but it wasn't the first thing I planned to put out. And then this other thing intervened. It was like, no, 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 we need this out. What was that? Was there a similar experience like that for you?
I would say yes, and I sense as a writer slash author is that to there needs to be a lot of self-reflection as to am I just procrastinating? Am I
Yes.
just hesitating, putting off? Because if I never publish it, nobody can ever criticize it. I think a lot
Right.
of writers go through that.
Yeah.
And then there's that willingness to surrender into something that's maybe bigger or wiser than you are, and to become the instrument that this information or this song comes through. And I would say I had the same experience with all of the books. Uh, I'm going to bring a couple of things out that I would like to share that I feel are really important.
Absolutely.
One One thing that I struggled with writing and with that idea of like who do we need one more book on this topic? Because I don't write novels, I write nonfiction. Does the world need one more book about this? So that was my own like hesitation, and where I found peace and grace in that question was looking back over my own life and realizing that there had been a couple of books. I'm in my coming into my late 70s, so I've got a long period of time from when I learned to read, like 60 years or 70 years of reading, that there had been books that I had read that changed the direction of my life, that impacted me in such a way that they opened up either a portal or another perspective, or deeply touched me on an emotional level as well as a thinking logic level.
Yeah.
When I reflected on that, I realized if that person hadn't written that book, my life would have gone most likely in another direction. And that supported me in responding to my own hesitation and saying, Ingrid, if only one person reads this and it's able to bring something new into their life or open a door or answer a question, then the book is enough. And even more than that, what I realized was that there's something happens for me as an author in
Yes.
writing of the book. And so, was it enough? Is it enough? Was it enough to just go ahead and write it and to allow it to come forth and allow it to do the work it wants to do or it's been called to do, and you step out of the way because you're changed as the writer, but it can also make an enormous difference in the life of just one person. So I wanted to share that with for those listening who maybe are struggling or question, considering writing or struggling with completion or sometimes I think there's the first time that you have a bad review. We all have to face that, like some total random stranger on the internet writes something bad about your book.
Right.
They have no skin in the game. They just write something and you're like stabbed in the heart.
Uh-huh.
And one of my sons, bless his wisdom, he said to me, Mom, why would you want to write a book that everyone liked?
Hmm.
Because if that was the case, you didn't say anything.
Oh, wow.
And it really landed in a place in that wound, the stabbing wound
Right.
of this horrible criticism, that's true because not everybody's going to like what I write about or agree with it or think that it was well written. And so that's also the risk that we take is our willingness to be authentic and to not, otherwise we're just making baby food or white frosting made with Crisco and powdered sugar. There's nothing to it.
Right.
So, so we want to write something that is individual and unique and authentic so that it does affect people whether they like it or they don't. And
I,
so,
yes, I agree. I agree so much. I have a couple of different kind of perspectives on that. So again, writing my first, even my autobiography, I was like, who's gonna care about this? Who am I writing this for me? Am I writing it like who am I even writing it for? And it started of like, okay, well, I'm writing this for me to get it out and work through it. But now I had a conversation with somebody and they were like, well, you're writing it for other women who have gone through similar situations as well. And that stuck with me. I was like, oh, like I didn't think about it like that. I just thought, okay, I'm telling these stories and who other than me is really going to care about them? But I really had to focus on the fact that, well, there are other women who've gone through these traumas and they don't know how to get past them, or they don't know how to work through them, or they feel alone in how they're feeling about these things. And just simply reading something that someone wrote that you can relate to can, like you said, it can change your life.
yeah,
And so, I said, okay, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna keep going with, and I haven't sold hundreds of thousands of copies of anything, but I keep going because I know that there are people out there who want to read what I have to say. And same with the workbooks. Well, who's gonna pay attention to this? Well, other parents who want to know how to get through certain things, or just want educational information on certain parent aspects of parenting, or you just kind of go through the thing that you're focused on and say, okay, this is who's gonna want to read this. My this is my target audience, this is who, and this is my why, because I could change someone's life. I
yeah,
think that's perfectly well said.
yeah. The other part that I have heard other writers talk about, and I faced myself, is like, even with this Women of the Always book coming out, they're never finished.
Yes.
And the statement that a book, a story that's written is never over. It just ends in an interesting place.
Mm,
And because nothing ever stops. You can stop the story of the life of somebody if you're writing a novel, but then the life around continues. And that's the same with writing a book. I can go back every single time. It's like, oh, I should change that sentence, or maybe I need to put something more in there. There's this never ending adding and editing and correcting. And my advice or suggestion is you just have to let it go. You
yes.
just reach a point where you allow it to be whatever it is and bring it forth. And if there's something new that comes to you that you want to write about, that you think you should have added into that book, start another book.
Yes.
Because life changes, experiences change us and how our perspective or what we believe or what direction we want to go. And because our life is ongoing, the book would be ongoing and you would never finish it. So finish what you've written, put it out there. And if you have something new to say, start a new book. That's
Yes.
another piece of it. This isn't necessarily about giving advice, but about just the experiences of me, that I have. I write every day. I do the process that was introduced using a name introduced by Julia Cameron back in the early 90s, where she talked about writing morning pages. And I do that practice. I write every morning, stream of consciousness. It's not about writing a book or writing poetry. I just kind of process through what's going on in my mind by writing it down, and then I rip the things up and throw them away so nobody reads all the stuff that I put on the page. And then I start writing what I want to write about it. It feels like I've cleared the muck out of the way. So, I want to talk. Is it okay if I talk a little bit about the process or do you have more questions you want to ask?
Well, since you mentioned Julia Cameron, I wanted to briefly touch on the book, The Artist's Way, that kind of that was a piece of inspiration for you through your journey as well. I want to leave that information for other people, in the description for other people to check out. But I wanted to briefly touch on it because you're actually not the first person I've heard mention that book.
Yeah. For It was part of a process and experience that I was going through. And I, a woman that was a client of mine, I had another life before. That doesn't matter. This woman that I knew, book had just come out. She was facilitating small groups of women working through that book as a workbook on a weekly basis. And she held the space not as the guru, but as the facilitator that kept everything together. And so she invited me to participate in it. And it was so, it had such an impact on me. The morning pages, doing artist dates, as answering questions, exploring ideas about art and creativity. But it was more than that. It was about independence and integrity and sovereignty as yourself. And I was so affected by it that I signed up and took her class again, back to back. It was just like 12 weeks for me wasn't long enough. I hadn't even started. I hadn't touched on it. So that's one of the books that I would say for me really opened up a pathway into to this possibility of being much more creative from my own sourced from my own creativity, rather than following the rules and behaving all the time. And so that, for me, that was a book. I think it continues to be over and over again. Pivotal for a lot of people, men and women. And then I started facilitating those groups. This was back in 1992. And I facilitated groups with using Artist's Way and a lot of her other books, encouraging women to have that opening of creativity, and I taught creative writing. I did a lot of creative exploration classes, and they were really fueled, or that was the spark for me, that book. Another book that I would say, this goes back a lot longer. This was a book that I read. Well, I'm rambling around. I talk in circles. The book Women of the Always came because of a question that I asked my father when I was 8 years old. So that's how far back that book, that's how long, it was a long gestation. And I was raised in a family, and I talk about this in the Women of the Always book, that I was raised in a family that was uh, considered Christian, and my father was definitely the head of the house, and my mother was in service to that. There were five of us. I have four siblings. And I remember asking my father this question, why don't, why are there so many women in the Bible that don't have names? And
Right.
I know that I was 8 years old because there's a sequence of the memory of that. And my father was really patient. He was always very kind. And he took a breath and he kind of thought about it. And his answer to me was, Ingrid, that's just the way it is.
Hmm.
Now, this was not a good answer for an 8-year-old that was
Right.
going over the fact that the women didn't have any names. So that I had to chew on that for a very long period of time. And I came across then, probably I was more like, I would say 10, 11 years old. My mother had a book that was called I Married Adventure. It was
Mm.
written by a woman named Osa Johnson, who was the wife of this big game hunter, photographer. His name was Martin Johnson. And she wrote a book. It's just, I mean, these are things, again, back the pivotal things that shift your life. I remember
Yeah.
the cover, it looked like a zebra skin. It was just a really exotic book. And I loved it because this was this woman, this young woman that traveled all over the world, and they met big game in Africa and headhunters in Borneo. And, I mean, I was just like eating it up. This living on a farm in Northern California kind of thing. It's like I'm traveling with Osa Johnson. At the end of the book is this um, little newspaper clipping, literally a picture of a newspaper clipping. They were flying home. He had promised that they would come back to the States and they would build a house with a white picket fence and have children and all the things that would be a normal life. And the plane crashed in here, actually right near here where I am in Southern California, in the mountains near the Burbank airport. And the plane crashed, and he died in the plane crash, and she didn't.
Oh, wow.
And that's where the book came from. But the thing that stuck in my mind because of that question I had asked, this little clipping of, on the way home in the fog, this plane crashed and so many people were injured and so many people died, and big game hunter, famous Martin Johnson, died, and he was survived by his wife, but she didn't have a name. Her name was Osa, O-S-A, just like three little letters that could have been in there. Everybody else had a name, but
Yeah.
and she had done everything that he had done, all his travels, all his work. She'd always been with him. And yet, at the time of his death, to just be listed as he was survived by his wife,
Yeah.
I was like so upset and so sad, but I was really angry. I remember being really angry. Why doesn't she have a name? And so those are when I say books that have really shifted things for me or opened up a question or led me on a journey. Um, that's part of the Women of the Always book, as I talk about. There's another, I won't go into that, but there's another book um, that I speak about in this writing about women women without names and
Yeah.
how that affects us and what that means. And so, so that's my writing. And like I said, I write all the time. I write every day, whether I keep it or throw it away. And um, the first the first book, which isn't actually an ISBN published book, the first book that I did produce is a book called Unfamiliar, and it's completely handmade. I made a limited edition handmade paper that was made specifically for the book, an old hand printing press, so the type was all set by hand. It's bound in leather. This is on my website, the story of the creation of this book. It's
Okay.
bound in leather. That was all the book is hand stitched with linen thread. My um, the woman that did the printing hand cut all the covers. And what started out to be a book about runes, and I thought there's too much information. I don't know what to write. So I began by limiting myself. And so this book is a book of 33 poems, and if one poem for each rune that I wrote about, and every poem is only 33 words. And the poems have no punctuation, so they're done in lines, so that basically you could read them bottom to top, top to bottom, or mix them up because it's not punctuated.
Yeah.
And every one is limited to 33 words. When you put a restriction on yourself that way, like I can only write my autobiography if every chapter only has 100 words, for instance. It's
Right.
a very different process. You approach it from the bunch of words, the endless amount, and you distill it and you make every word count. Every word really holds a place in that particular poem or paragraph or page. And so I only made 33 copies of this book. And it was very expensive to produce because, I paid like $2 a page for just each piece of paper that was
Right.
handmade. And I sold them for $333 each book.
Wow.
I sold them out before it was even published because I had so many
Wow.
people who wanted this. It's like an art book, it's like an art piece. So
Yeah.
that's the first book really that I published in that sense that I produced it. But because it's more of a piece of art rather than a reproduced. I have people that will contact me, please make another series, or if anybody ever wants to sell their book, I'll buy it from them. It's been an interesting journey. So that was about 12 years ago that I published the Unfamiliar book that's all
Wow.
handmade. So if you want to read the story, it's on my website.
That's what I was looking at now. Yeah.
I think you have
Wow.
to go under runes and books and anyway, it's very beautiful because there's a picture of Claire who had the printing press holding this big we went to Portland Leather Goods and we bought this really giant cowhide rolled up and then laid it out so that we cut the covers of the book from this big cowhide. It was a fun process.
Yeah, I bet. It just kind of it goes to show how much I have to learn because I never would have thought of putting that much into the making of something other than children, like
And that's never ending, right?
right.
Yeah. Well, it also for me it it was sobering. It was very
Yeah,
honoring to consider what it took, hundreds of years ago. What did it take to publish a book?
that's so true.
And that
So true.
the type, when they were left from writing by hand and using movable type, those and those letters have to be put in, they're put in backwards. It's like a mirror image. And every single page has to have the type set into those boxes so that it can be printed with the printing press, which is
Right.
so literally one page at a time. It's not like you type it on the computer and everything is go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's this place where you also our inkjet printers print on the surface. Handset type with a printing press actually impresses the letter into the paper. So there's an indent. When you look at this book Unfamiliar, and I didn't print on both sides. I only printed on one side. Every piece of paper is just
Yeah.
one side printed because you can open that and you can see the impression of the print. The letter actually was pressed into the paper.
Wow.
So that leaves like for me, it leaves an indent that can be filled with your breath. If we think of reading and speaking as breathing, we breathe with our words. There's a place that we breathe into that indentation. And
Yeah.
that doesn't happen when you produce, not that there's anything wrong with typing things on a computer. I don't mean that, but there's
Right.
some other intimacy that happens or it happened for me, maybe for somebody else too. It happened for me that there was an intimacy that was created, not just with the 33 words, but with every single letter that was pressed into this piece of handmade paper and became a book. And that's very, I don't know, it's just near and dear to me to hold that book and to say this was pressed and breathed into existence.
It really makes it so much more special.
Yeah.
Um, because not only are you, kind of taking your time. When we write books, we write on computers, especially now, there's all of these kind of tricks that we can use. I just recently started using AI for very minimal things. I mean, like finding hashtags and things like that. And I've really hesitated with using AI for anything for a long time because I feel part of my authenticity is going to be taken away. And so I'm trying to figure out, okay, what can I use things for that keep me authentic and, not kind of doing the work for me. And just the process that you're describing, the little details of keeping the authenticity, it makes the process so much more of an experience. And it just feels like you're just so much closer and the experience is more of a focus and not just putting something out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And for us to find a balance with modern technology, they are tools. But there is also a level of laziness that can be
Yeah.
present so that we lose our ability to do research or we lose our ability to discern, because there's so
Yes.
much out there. And discernment is that wanting to sort through. And the English language is so rich. There are so many words that are beautiful and describe have a depth of meaning that people never use. And so to me, there's also that I write everything by hand, and then I do use the computer as a
I do
tool
too. I do
because
too.
there's something that I breathe when I write.
Yeah.
How hard you press on the page even is perhaps, or how big. I have one sister, my older sister, she prints like microscopic. Her printing is like, I can't even read it. I need to make two classes, printing classes. So when I'm really excited about something, my handwriting gets big. Like a
Hmm.
grocery list with three items written on one piece of paper. So there's this intimacy that I believe uh, needs to be supported and encouraged. a connectedness, a discipline in a sense of how we don't just take that first Google AI summary.
Yeah.
What else, what is behind that? Where is there more? Where is there a subtlety that you can breathe into? And that would
Yes.
be for me, looking back at the experience of producing a handmade book. It gave me a deep, deep appreciation of what's really involved when we write and
Yes.
make and print something that is available to someone else. It goes out of the storytelling into the printed page, and that there's a sacred obligation that we have as writers, I believe, to put to be as authentic as possible with our own voice so that that does touch someone who's reading those words.
I absolutely
Well,
agree.
I'm excited. I hope that something that I shared or some perspective that I offered touches someone that's listening or watching and maybe inspires them to finish a book or to start the book or
Yeah.
just open up to language in a different way. To me, that's also what writing is about.
Absolutely. And so I'm currently have started providing writing coaching, and the person that I'm working with now, there were a couple of things that we talked about that we've experienced through this process of, one of, well, who's going to pay attention to what should I put this out there? Who's going to pay attention? And also keeping authenticity. Especially when you start out as a writer, you're kind of figuring out, okay, uh, you have your, I want people to kind of get to know me as an author. So I put, kind of an author bio, or I do a little about me on the back of the book, or, some things like that. And it was important to me. I know a lot of people, or I feel like a lot of people currently may use, just AI, just for example, for, okay, just kind of put in some details about myself and write me this description real quick. And it was really, really important to me for this client to, we're going to write everything, we're going to write everything ourselves.
Mhm.
They're doing a couple of different genres. So, then we're modifying the about me information to kind of fit different focuses. But it was really important, and I just added this service. And so, but one thing that was really important to me was to keep the authenticity. And kind of like you said about balancing using these tools that are available, and it was like it's okay to use these tools, but still learning how to keep what we are putting out there coming from us. Um, and so that just kind of came to mind when we were talking about, kind of discerning how to use helpful things without them kind of taking over and doing the work for us.
Yes, yeah. Well, and that's it's anything that's modern or new that's coming forward. You can read stories about how people in the past were afraid of electricity and that having electricity in their house, that they thought that it was dangerous and they wanted to keep with candles and gas lamps, or
Right.
how people were afraid to ride in a motor car. So it's always a challenge. There's a gift, there's a curse there. This How do we navigate and balance? And balance isn't static. Balance is always this weighing. There's movement in the balance that is, does this serve me, or am I in service to it? And
Yes.
did I lose my voice? I'm a very unconventional writer, as any of you that read my books will see. I write in very short sentences. I don't take stuff all the way across the page. My books have lots of space in them, and I don't use, proper sentences with, noun and verb kind of thing. So that's my voice. And when the first book I went to publish, the person that was working with me sent back edited. It's like you just edited out me.
Yes.
You corrected all of that. That was in there intentionally. It's
Yeah.
not I made a mistake or I don't know what I'm doing. That's how I write. And
Yes.
so I think that that's a good thing to remember as a writer is we need to know the structure of the language. We need to know how to use language. And then from that place, we make it our own. It becomes
Yes.
unique to us. And
Yeah.
it doesn't have to, every book doesn't have to look the same or be written the same so that there are, to me, when I open up a book and there's too much on the page, it's like just text, 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 text. I feel that there's no place to be with it. It's like
Hmm.
so the space is already full, so full that there's no room for the reader.
Yes. And if you're anything like me, I'm an avid note taker, and I like to take notes even when I'm reading. Like my autobiography, I actually put a notes section in the back for,
Yeah.
if you want to take notes while you're reading. Me, I just write on the pages.
Me too.
But
I write all my books. It's like, well, get your books from the library. No, I can't because I write in them. I
right.
actually, yeah, yeah, that's me. There to me, books are tools. And
Yeah.
they're well loved and respected. And yes, I write in my books because I don't want to be reading the book and then have to go find a notebook. It's like, well, what did I make a note about that in a notebook? And then I
Yes.
can't find the notebook. No, it's right here on the page. And that's why there needs to be room. So that my books have lots of room in them.
Right. Yeah. I really quickly I meant to mention this in the beginning, but the way we actually met was on a networking platform, but we both are authors who have written through Red Thread Publishing.
Yes.
Um, and so that's how we met, as fellow authors. But I was part of a collaborative work, Notes to Motherland. What did you work on through Red Thread?
I've didn't work on a collaboration. I found a woman that I've known for many years, Sarah, um, wrote in a collaboration with Red Thread Publishers. And when I
Gotcha.
saw her book, I just reached out to her and asked about her experience and how was it because I was in the process. I pretty much had the manuscript finished for Women of the Always, and I had self-published my first book, Runes Revealed. I was contacted by Wiser Books. After they had read Runes Revealed, they contacted me and asked me, was I writing anything else because they would like to publish whatever else I was writing. So the second book was published through Wiser Books. So
Okay.
there's self-publishing and a regular publishing house publishing. And then there was this third book, and I hadn't really decided what I wanted to do and how I wanted to put it out. And I was intrigued by Red Thread because it was woman owned.
Right.
Their mission was to publish women authors, give a place and a voice for women, and that my friend Sarah had had a really good experience working with them. So
Hmm.
that was my choosing of Red Thread. And and up to this point, the book hasn't been released. It's the September 21st is when is our release date.
Okay.
But at this point, I've really loved working with all of them. It's been a very beautiful experience. And
Yeah.
self-publishing, it feels like it's a hybrid. It's kind of a combination between, a publishing package that you pay for compared to Wiser Books gave an advance for the writing. And then
Okay.
my first self-publishing, I was kind of flapping around on my own and had to
Yeah.
get an editor involved and excuse me. So I've had a little bit of all of it, and I'm already working. I've got a couple of other books already that are gestating that
Right.
for
Yeah.
the future. Plus, I do. lot of private consultation. I do mentoring with people globally. Actually, I work with people all over the world, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, so um, that's, and in between that, I write. So, or I do my consulting in between my writing.
Um, Tell us kind of just really briefly, really quick, what the next book of yours that we look forward to coming out in late September.
So the title of the book is Women of the Always, Rooted in Wisdom Sourced in the Dark.
Oh,
And and then excuse me, I'm going to turn this off for a minute so I can cough.
okay.
Um, and then there are three more words that I add to this, which is creative, spiritual, sexual. And so the focus of this book is that I call the creativity, spirituality, sexuality the holy trinity of life, and that they all work together, and that as women of the always is that place where we are we are the birthers, we are she who brings forth life from the body. And the reason I say women of the always, rooted in wisdom sourced in the dark, is that there's so much focus today particularly in the spiritual communities, about high vibration and raising your consciousness and lifting, transcending life and earth and all of that, as if there's something wrong here. And that what I use the illustration of the tree, that the only way that a tree can be in existence with its glorious leaves and branches and fruiting, or acorns or apples, it doesn't matter, is because it has a deep root system. And the root system is what stabilizes the tree. The root system is also where the tree is fed. The water, the nutrients comes up through the root. That place in the earth, that anchored in the earth, is not a place of light. It's not a place of high vibration. It's not a place of raised consciousness. It's the dark places of the earth from which we are fed, and where our balance comes from, and rootedness allows us then to bring these things up and make them evident. But and as everything is completed on the tree, the leaves, the fruit, it falls back to the earth and it returns to the place of the dark. It actually has to be composted and rotted and eaten and dug back in, so that the worms and the bacteria and everything feed off of that which came from the darkness, came from the root. And so that, I would say, is the essence of the women's wisdom, that we're rooted in the wisdom of those places that don't need light. We don't need to shine light
Hmm.
into the root system of a tree,
Hmm.
because there's no need, there's nothing missing in that place. Um, any more than we would say light is missing something, why would we say that the darkness is missing? And so
Right.
that's the essence and the foundation of this. And I truly believe that women, because of our bodies being so different, that we understand that concept, that we're rooted in the wisdom of the connectedness of the earth, and that which we bring forth, we give birth to new life that comes out of the darkness, out of the nutrients. We feed from our bodies.
Right.
But the moment that we give birth to death. Because
Hmm.
you're a mother, I'm a mother, right? And we know that nobody wants to say that, but the truth is
Yeah.
that we have brought new life into the world through our bodies, and that eventually that being that we created will return to the earth, just as we do.
Right.
And so there's this beautiful balance of darkness brought forth and return. And so that book is set up with 26 chapters. Each chapter is a single word, like darkness or blood or breast or weaving. So there's these 26 topics that follow the course of a year, 13 full moons and 13 dark moons. So you can actually follow it, use the book as a year's guide through these topics specific to women. I'm really, it's a class I created in 2005, and I taught it for about 10 years. I taught it as a year-long class. And so it's set up that way. I encourage women to use it that way, to come together in groups and use the book that way, or read it on your own. But it's a different approach because it really is rooted in the wisdom of the darkness of the place from which we are fed, rather than high vibration and white light.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. And I look forward to reading it, and I'm really excited for it to be born and put out into the world. And I think that it will greatly benefit a lot of women. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to that.
Mm.
Um, is there anything else that you would like to um, cover before we wrap up?
I would say the easiest way to find me is through my name, because my website is my name,
Mhm.
ingridkincaid.com. So it's easy to find me. If you email me, you can email Ingrid at ingridkincaid.com. So it's not complicated.
All
You don't
right.
have to memorize anything. And if anybody's interested, they listen to this and they are interested in the book, you can email me and say, put me on the list so that they get the announcement. It will be available, of course, through other channels like online. But
Yeah.
I love to hear from people. I love to work with people. I provide mentoring, coaching, spiritual guidance, a lot of, and I would say also, I feel very privileged and honored to be an elder. And there's so much out there in the world, and we need the youth. But
Yeah.
there's very, very rarely do you come to hear the voice of the elders. And I would say we don't really enter into that elderhood. Maybe even I haven't yet. I think sometimes we have to get into our late 70s, 80s, hopefully that we live that long, that we
Yeah.
speak not only from what we know, but our life experience, and that we hold a different place in the community that's been forgotten. And so I speak that way I speak with the voice of an elder in the community, and that many people that come to me actually come because of that. That
Mhm.
what I carry has a, um, a depth or a weightedness to it that can only come. Doesn't mean you can't be wise when you're younger, but
Right.
some things have can only come when you have lived into these older years, and you get to the point where you don't care, and it's not that you don't care about life,
Yeah.
but you just it's different. It's different. Then you are willing to say things. You're willing to be, as I call myself, irreverent.
Mm.
I don't have to play the game of I'm afraid to say something that's going to upset somebody or trouble somebody. That
Right.
to have an opinion, to have a voice, doesn't make it right or wrong, but to really, as an elder, to be able to speak from a place that's different than a lot of what's uh, available, so readily available
Right.
today. So that's how I end. That's my pontification, right?
Absolutely beautiful. Well, I really appreciate you being here today, and I'm excited for our other topics that we'll also be speaking on later, and I look forward to that as well. Thank you so much for being here.
You are so welcome. It was just delightful. It was great to talk with you today. Bye
Same.
bye.
Okay, bye. Check us out on YouTube at Reah Higgs, ReahHagues. You can also keep up with us on Instagram at Just the Who Podcast.